John, welcome to the show, and I'm buzzing that we've been able to do this one today.
Thanks for having me.
And I was thinking of so many different places for us to start, but I want to go back to you and Mr. Morris navigating the UCAS clearing system of all places.
Oh, so you heard about that? Yes.
You know I do my research, I promise you that.
Yeah. So I I did 6 year in school, and I literally applied for one course, which was Glasgow Cali, and it was land economics. So that was, I was going to be a chartered surveyor. That was always the goal. Go in, do property. That was the path. Go become a chartered surveyor. I needed a D in 6 year. And all I did was go out and party and play basketball and rugby. And I failed everything. So when I got the results in, I was working as a labourer at the time, and my old man phones me and he's like, "You've not got any results." And I was like, "What do you mean? I need a D." And he's like, "You've got nothing." And he's like, "I'll call you back later." So he phones me back. He's like, "I've managed to get you in through clearing to Edinburgh Napier University." And I was like, "How have you done that?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." So I spoke to him later on. He's like, "I just phoned up and pretended to be you and like gave him all your results and did this, and then yeah, they accepted you." And I was like, "Oh, cheers, Dad. Thanks very much."
He knew how to work the system, and in those days it wouldn't have been the text, or it wouldn't have been the email or the notification they get now. It would have been the letter. So of course Dad opened it.
Yeah. So I think I never actually opened any of my results. My dad's like, he's a solicitor. He's very like diligent, reads loads of books, very book smart. And when it comes to me, I'm not that way at all. But he was always like really excited about my results. I was really good at maths. That was the only thing. That and PE was the only things I really took to. So he always opened up because he was excited about them. So I sat I think my standard grade maths a year early, and I remember him like when the letter came in, he opened it, he was like, "You got a 1." Ah! He was like so excited.
He was more pleased than you.
Exactly. And then when I got hires again, he came in and was like, "Oh," and I was like, "You can just read them." And he was like, "Oh, you got an A for PE, and then you've got C's for everything else." I was like, "Cool, C's are good, right?" So it was just a bit weird that he had to phone up and be like, "Yeah, I've managed to get you into somewhere else." But also it was just like the school system never told me. They only told me this was the one course that I could do at Glasgow Cali. I never got told by any of my tutors or teachers that I could do another course.
There were other options open to you. You just had to go and pursue them. So you go off to Edinburgh Napier. The driver previously was you wanted to be a surveyor of some form.
So it was the same. So it's a similar course.
Okay.
So I ended up doing property development and valuation at Edinburgh Napier. It was just, so it's packaged differently, but it's the same course. I was still training to become a chartered surveyor. That was the idea. So I did qualify, but then when I got out of uni, obviously chartered surveyors were getting sacked left, right and centre because it was just out of the financial crash, and it was like people with 20 years experience were losing their jobs, and I'm coming out not knowing a thing, but I was like, "I've got a degree," and they're like, "We don't care. We're not hiring you." So
timing matters for these things. I really, really do think that. And you see a lot of careers are shaped by what was happening in the economic environment at that time. So like recessions create entrepreneurs. Of course they do, because less employers are taking on people in the same numbers, or they're taking on less experienced people to kind of guide them, because they're just focusing on the bottom line at that moment in time. So when you're going in with your certificate from Napier saying, "Oh, like I'd love to start as a surveyor," whatever they're thinking, look, like as you say, we've just been laying people off. We're cutting back on costs. We're not bringing in another mouth to feed.
Exactly. So it was definitely a very interesting time, but I luckily enough managed to get a sales job, and kind of that started my journey from there.
Let's talk about that journey then. What was the start?
So from there, I was working in a restaurant and riding rickshaws around Edinburgh. So I used to live in Edinburgh, so the pedicabs. So I was riding them, so always been a very big workhorse, happy to like put the hours in to get money. And then one day a week, so I took one day a week off, and then I would travel through to Glasgow and intern for free for an entire year with a company that eventually offered me a job. So they opened up an office in Edinburgh, and they were like, "Do you want to open up this office?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And at the time I was thinking, I don't really know if I can do this, but I was like, yes, of course I can. And it's one of those, if you get offered something you don't think you can do it, just do it. If you can't do it, then it doesn't matter. If you can do it, then you can just progress massively from there.
Yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained at that point, because as you say, that was your opening, and we were still in an era where there wasn't going to be abundant roles in that space. And I guess with the day a week's experience you built up over a year, you actually were building some sort of skill set that was going to allow you to go and do this job.
Yeah, what I realised, when you go from like being a student to being a professional is, I mean, ultimately when you're an adult, we're all just big babies at the end of the day. We're just like making it up as we go along. And I was fortunate enough, it was a fun working environment. I don't take myself too seriously, but also I'm very good at talking to people, which is all about sales. Sales is like speaking to somebody, putting yourself out there and just having a conversation, find out what it is they want. And I just kind of took to that really well. So I think they understood that when they offered me the job. And obviously I kind of rolled with it really well.
How quickly did you realise that was a skill set of yours? Was that even pre-university?
I'd never realised it'd been a skill set. I think, I mean, from a very young age, it was always like, oh, I played lots of different sports. So I was used to going into trials and going into new teams that have already been formed, and I would go in and be like, well, this is just the kind of thing you do. But I was always told, oh, well, you're really good at making friends. You're really good at talking to people. And I don't know if that's just like been constantly drilled into me from such a young age that I've always been fine with going into new situations.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
John, you're great at making new friends.
Yeah.
Okay, well, watch me.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think it's helped me. But I mean, I'm a big guy, and I've always been a big guy. So I've kind of stand out by like want to approach people as well, because I don't want to be intimidating in any way. So I think some people, when they look at me, are like, oh fuck, look at that guy.
There's Tyson Fury.
There's Tyson Fury, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I wish I was Tyson Fury. That guy's minted. But yeah, for me, it's putting myself in situations that other people may feel uncomfortable, whereas I've always just been like, it's fine. Like,
and from that, there comes an element of like exposure therapy. So by you doing those reps almost unconsciously and just doing them so often, when it came to be an actual career where you had to speak to people and try and sell them something or get them on side or build a relationship, it comes slightly more naturally than some people who go into a sales environment or go into a career where they're not used to maybe the rejection or maybe the awkwardness of some of those initial stages, because not everything goes perfectly to plan.
Yeah. I mean, if you are willing to put yourself out there, you will get so much more back. And so it's funny because, I mean, Nathan is sat over there and he's very much an introvert, and even just like phoning the deliveries for sometimes for the food, maybe doesn't want to have to do it, whereas I'm like, well, let's just get somebody on the phone, let's do this, let's do that. So you just got to put yourself out there sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like levels of competence you can build within an existing skill set, and everyone's got different levels of potential in particular areas, and you probably had a predisposition to be outgoing and able to network with people, but guess what, you put in hours and hours of repetition. Yeah. So it became like, oh, I'm just going to get really, really good at this and grow from there. What were those early years working like?
Fun, I think going, like when I finished uni and it was like I wanted to get a job in property, and then having to work in a restaurant and doing all the various jobs, it was like, oh no, I'm not going to actually get a job. So once I was hired, full-time position, 9 to 5, I was like, this is great. And for getting paid the salary, because when you're working in a restaurant, it's like you get paid for the hours you work, and then getting paid a salary was quite enjoyable. Going with a suit and tie to work, being a professional, I was like, this is quite cool. And then I always wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I was like, okay, if I work somewhere for long enough, I'll get and show them what I can do. And I've always been like, okay. And I used to note down all the properties I sold. So then at the end of the year, I could go to my boss, look, this is all the properties I sold. I reckon I can beat this target next year. If I can get this, what would you be willing to pay me? Kind of thing. And just set it out from there. And it was never like, okay, I want to leave, I want to do this really quickly. It was just, what can I do next year? Can I be better than last year? What can I do next year? Can I be better than last year? And just lay that out and just keep trying to progress.
Do you think you had a level of patience?
I mean, yeah. When I left uni, social media wasn't really a massive thing. It was like, you finish uni, you get a job. That was it. You get a job, you start making more money, then maybe you buy a house, a flat, whatever. Then you start a family. So I think now it's very much, you need to be a millionaire by the time. When I was younger, it was, I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. Now I think it's like everybody wants to be a millionaire by the time they're 25. I'm like, there's no life experience there. And even looking back, it's like wanting to be a millionaire by the time you're 30 is still like an aspirational goal. But people are like, oh, £1 million is nothing anymore. It's still a lot of money.
Yeah, it's interesting how much this content we consume online shapes our expectations for ourselves, but others around us as well.
Yeah.
And as you say, 2011, leaving university, there wasn't that level of saturation from information that you would expect to even be like your own boss either.
Yeah.
So there was an acceptance that, look, I'm going to use this corporate ladder to climb up and pursue progress in that avenue through the promotions, through the titles, through the income that comes with that, opening the Edinburgh office, all these things, they actually, I don't want to say satisfy, but they solidify your choice at that stage in time.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess if we fast forward to more recently when you've gone self-employed, some of the content's changed, but obviously your life experience has radically changed as well, which maybe gives you more of a footing to go and do that. Because a lot of people are maybe jumping to that self-employment thing so quickly and just charging all in, and all respect and love for that. And many of the guests that come on the podcast have gone and done that. But I also really admire stories like yours where you built up what a previous guest, Dr. Meg J, would describe as identity capital in that role for 10, 12 years, getting really, really good at an area. And guess what? Okay, well, maybe I'm going to turn my hand to do this myself.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's all I've done since I got my job. All I've done is property sales, and it's specifically auction sales. So when I go and meet people, that's what I talk about, and it's like, so property investments and property sales. So I'm a big believer. I'm always selling something. If somebody's got properties, I'm trying to get them to come to me to then sell the properties, or if they're looking to buy more, then I'm like, well, what are you looking for? I can sell you some. That's just the way I've always been. And as you say, because I've done it now, that is my identity. When somebody looks at me, I mean, my Instagram bio is John_property_auctioneer. So I am the property auctioneer. A guy actually came up to me in the park the other day and was like, "You're that auctioneer, aren't you?" I was like, yes I am.
That's great though, because you're living the identity that you want people to view you through, and you're living in alignment with that. And it's not as if you're trying to live this online persona that doesn't link to the most important things in life, which are your career and how you spend your time as well. And I wonder, if you reflect on those kind of 12 years working within an organisation, what are some of the big lessons that you learned during that period?
For me, there's a lot that I learned personally of what I definitely don't want to do in my company, in ways that I don't want to treat staff. And also, you get out what you put in. That I worked my ass off when I worked there, and I got paid very well. And as I say, I was always trying to push for more. So, and trying to instill that into my staff now, I'm saying, look, well, you can make a lot of money, but it's not an easy thing if you get out what you put in. So I used to go to a lot of networking events, like probably more so than I used to, I used to go to a lot more than I do now. But when I go now, I'm presenting. So when I was younger, I was wanting to speak to everybody. I was wanting to get to know these people. And now people know who I am because I've put in all those hours of going and seeing these people. So it's like, it just takes time as well, and be willing to be not good for a little bit to get better, to then get better, to then get better.
It is a little bit of patience.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really hard skill to teach when maybe you are seeing content online that's showing you that things are happening so fast for somebody else.
Yeah.
But by the very nature of the algorithm, they're showing you an outlier.
Of course.
They're showing you somebody that has broken past the societal norms. When you reflect on the way that you want to build your team and your culture, how does that differ to what you saw before if you're looking to differentiate?
Really rewarding the staff and having it as a fun workplace environment. I mean, we're obviously very vocal on social media. Everyone can see what we do. I mean, I don't take myself too seriously day to day. However, when we're talking about the actual work that I do for my clients, I mean, people come back to me for a reason. It's because I am very good. I know what I'm talking about. I know how much properties are worth. I know how much they're going to sell for. And it's like, I think sometimes people want to come work for us because they see, oh, it's really fun. And I'm like, yes, that is fun. But see what we're posting online, that's only a snippet of like the day to day. A lot of it is me sitting with the guys and actually drilling them down of like, okay, so how do you get better? Do you understand the investment metrics that you're actually talking about? Because the more you know, the better you are. I mean, I'm a big believer in rule number 1 of sales is knowledge. It's like literally know what you're selling, know what else. And if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, but go find that out. Then give it back to that person. Then they now know, okay, well, that was the one thing I wanted to check. Okay, I'm now ready to proceed. Okay, it's not what I wanted. I'm not ready to proceed. Perfect. Well, I now know your criteria, so we can tick that off, we can tick that off, we can tick that off. Can we move forward on this one?
I really like that, and one of my principles in sales has always been like being a trusted advisor. And I've seen your clip when you're talking about certainty, and it's exactly what you're saying there. You're allowed to say to a client, a buyer, a seller, I don't know, let me come back to you. if you were to bluff or to give an unconvincing answer and to sound unconvincing, which is the key part, they lose faith that they're dealing with somebody that can do the job to a level of competence and standard that they're happy with.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys hold yourself up as understanding the full circle, the buyer's position, the seller's position, and of course you guys in the middle making that happen at the rate that everyone wants it to happen at.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, being willing to be bad at something was something you said earlier,
Yeah.
and that's a great skill. Be willing to be like, I'm not going to be a know-it-all through every single moment of this transaction. I'm willing to be a white belt would be a term from a martial arts perspective. Go away and learn. And the guys that are coming into your team, which we'll go on to in a bit more depth, they've got a lot of knowledge and experience in you around them, so they can turn to, we can joke, sensei, and ask the question like, oh, what would you say in this sort of situation? Or like, have you ever been asked this before? The chances are yes. So you're able to distill that knowledge down for them.
I mean, I know for a fact that the staff hate it because they'll, for me, because I'm not so much smug with it, but they'll do something and then they're like, oh no, this isn't happening. I'm like, go back and do this, and I guarantee this happens. And then they'll get a chap in the door. Yeah, they've gone up now. And I'm like, oh, is it sold now? He's like, yeah, I'm just waiting. I was like, okay, yeah. I'm like, yeah. I was like, just ask me. I was like, see, if you'd asked me yesterday about that, we'd already sold it. Whereas you've tried to figure out yourself. Fair enough, they're entitled to do that. But sometimes just asking the question, what do you think? Because what I'll do is like, well, what are you going to do in this situation? And then if you're going to do it wrong, I'll be like, do you think that is the best way, or could we handle it another way? Make them think about it. Okay, maybe I could do that. Maybe that's a better way to do it.
It's consultative coaching.
Yeah.
If you just led them and said, just go in there and say that, they would resent it. Whereas if you're opening their eyes and letting them come to some of their own conclusions, but then also been like, P.S. in a previous conversation, I've landed it like this, and they're like, oh, that's really good. They just then need to go and find their version of delivering it in that way.
Yeah.
Because I really don't like the idea that people try and be like the Aldi or the B-Tech version of somebody. You'll have heard me say in the podcast many times that I don't want to be like the B-Tech Chris Williamson or the Aldi Stephen Bartlett or whatever. I want to build a show in my own style as a host. Of course, taking bits and pieces from what I think is done really well in the industry. And that's the same for the guys that are selling with you. They see how John does it. They see how your business partner Lewis does it. And there'll be bits and pieces they can take from both of you or even their colleagues at this stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing at the moment is we're really focusing on training the guys because they're all very interested in property, which is a massive thing for us when we're hiring people. I mean, I think so 3 of our staff members have all done property training courses, and they've all tried to go out on their own to be deal sourcers, and I think they've done a couple of deals, but it's not the riches and I'm sitting in Bali and I've done loads of deals. It's hard work to get those deals over the line, so that they understand what Lewis and I are building here. And it's like, look, we can teach you how to do it really well, but we're going to be hard on you if you make mistakes, so then you get better. That's what we want. We want all the guys to get better, because when they get better, they make more money. And then when they make more money, they're like, oh yes, they get better. And then it's like this a self-fulfilling prophecy that they go, and get it now. They just need that switch. Maybe it's punched into them of like, what have you done here? But I mean, I will let guys make mistakes and then correct them, because it's like they need to go through that journey themselves.
Absolutely. I want to rewind a little bit and understand, what was the tipping point for you to feel confident to start Prime 18 months, 2 years ago now? So it's not even been going that long.
Yeah, so I mean, I set up in July 2022. It wasn't so much a confidence thing. It was just kind of me and my ex-employer kind of had different views on certain things. I mean, I was like, we need to kind of push down in this social media thing. I was like, and I was doing my own YouTube videos and putting out like informative content. I was told not to do it, and I told like basically not to have an Instagram. You don't need it. And I was like, this is how I get lots of my clients, is like going out, meeting people. It's also a soft approach. They now know who I am before I go out and meet them for a coffee. So it was just kind of one of those things. I was like, well, there's a gap in the market here and we can blow this thing up. And he was like, no, I don't want to do it. And that's fine. So
do you think it's an age thing?
I think it's more of a control thing.
Depending on how somebody's wired, they can use age as an excuse, but it could potentially be, oh no, I just want to have a tighter grip of how we go to the market. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think you have seen my content, and as if I was an employee of somebody else, and it's like, they know what I'm like. So it's like, do they want me being my wacky self when the image is a very corporate brand?
I understand that.
So maybe that's it. So I mean,
Yeah.
I can, because I've got my own company, I can put out the media that I want to, and I don't have to. Fair enough, we take ourselves very seriously, but we also don't. So
When you've got that level of friction that leads you to pursue Prime another option, what needs to happen on a practical level for you to make the jump to being self-employed?
I'm fortunate enough that, I mean, I am very diligent in investing. So I put money aside, I have my own property portfolio, and I've been doing that for years. So it wasn't just like, I'm going to quit my job and hope for the best. It was, I actually had some money set aside. I've obviously got my own portfolio, and I was like, I know that I can live on this for a certain amount of time. I actually sold one of my Rolexes, and I was like, that pays the mortgage for 6 months.
You created a larger emergency fund, which I think is a really underrated thing for guys that maybe have gone down the corporate route and are considering making the jump. It's yours has come from quite a calculated space. I know you're saying like wacky, outgoing, high energy. Completely agree with that. But there's that other side to your personality where you've been like, okay, well, fiscally, the numbers stack up. Because you're a family man as well, John. You can't be responsible for your responsibilities.
And for me, I'm like super boring in my investment criteria. So, I mean, we sell refurbishment opportunities. I tend not to do refurbishments really because they're a pain in the arse. There's a very time heavy, which is then very mentally heavy, and I can't really be bothered with it. So I buy like usually vanilla buy to lets. I've got a few HMOs, but again, I bought them with tenants in situ. So they're like really high yielding, but I've always paid myself first as like, as soon as I got paid, okay, that goes into my ISA, that goes into just a general
Did you develop
savings
that
account.
quite early as a habit?
Yeah. Like I remember when I was at uni, so one of my mates that I lived with, his dad was super successful, and so my mate worked for IKEA, and he just did that every month. So as soon as he got paid, he was like, this is my fun money, and the rest of it went off. And I was like, why are you doing that? And he's like, have you ever heard of compound interest? And I was like, no, tell me about it. And then I was like, that's mental. I was like, so you just saved like this much? And he's like, yeah, by the time I'm 30, I will have this much money saved, and then by the time that's 40, if I didn't put anything else into it, then it will be worth this much. And I was like, that's bananas. Like, so you can just like save a little bit and the market does the rest. He's like, yes. So I got kind of fortunate that my friend's dad had told him, and then he told me, and it was just from there. It was like every time I got paid, save a little bit, save a little bit.
And some of those behaviours at 2021 allow you, when you're in your 30s, to go into your own business.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I never thought that I was going to set up my own business. That was never really a thing. It needed to happen when it happened. But because I was diligent for 10 years investing, that allowed it to be able to happen. I remember when I actually started, I was freaking out because I gave myself a certain amount of money. So I actually was like, okay, this is it. And when you start a business, your bank account just goes down and down and down. It's not like, oh, woo, we're making loads of money. For the first couple of months, it's just going down and down and down.
What were the big expenses?
Setting up the website. So you've obviously got to pay a developer. I mean, I started looking at YouTube videos and like, oh, maybe I can make my own website. And I was like, whoa. Like,
Opened up the Wix account, had a play.
oh, it was just, for me, I was like, the time that it's going to take me to learn this, I would rather just pay someone to do it. I would rather just pay someone to do that, and it gets it up and running, and then I can actually say, I can do what I'm good at, which is sell properties.
Which is a really high leverage skill.
And then so you've got to pay for loads of subscriptions. Again, people don't understand that. It's like, oh, just set up a website. It's like, yeah, but then you've got to have your server, all these different things. Obviously, you've got to pay for Rightmove, Zoopla on the market. So I was like, and it's just all goes out. And then as soon as you're starting, you're not selling anything. And I mean, I work in a no sale, no fee basis, so I don't take money up front or anything like that. It's not like, oh, well, the marketing costs are going to be £500. It's like, no, sell with me.
That's wrapped up. Let's proceed from here.
Yeah. So it was just month on month, I was like, oh no. I mean, fortunately, it was a lot of expense up front, but I was selling like, say, 30 to 35 properties a month in my old job, right? Very big company. The sales target was really good for the whole business, and they've got a lot of like time in the market behind them. And I think my first auction, I had maybe like 10, 12 lots or something, and we sold 2. And I was like, oh, this is going to work. But also I'm like, how many properties do I actually need to sell every single month to make this a viable business? And it just like slowly grew. And then I think the next auction I sold 8, the next one I sold 9, the next one I sold 10. And like Lewis came on board, and it's like just kind of gathered pace from there and there and there.
What was the conversation like to get Lewis on board with Prime? Because appreciate you had a great skill set and you could have run a great business by yourself at a particular level, I imagine. But given the behemoth that you're growing into and some of the ambitions that you've got, bringing somebody on board is obviously vital.
So Lewis is very level-headed, and he is a very shrewd businessman. So he actually reached out to me. So we used to hang out, play badminton and stuff, and he's a property investor. I mean, he does and buys up properties and stuff. So we knew each other from the property scene, and he's big on Trello boards. So he showed me all his Trello boards, how he goes back and makes offers with all the estate agents and stuff. And when I started, he was in one of the networks that we're both a part of. I think he was speaking to the guy who runs it, and he was like, "Oh, well, John's just started a new business." So Lewis actually just texted me. He's like, "Oh, do you want to meet up for a coffee?" And I was like, "Okay." So we met for a coffee, which is very odd because Lewis doesn't drink coffee. So I sat there. I was like, "What are you drinking?" He's like, "I'm just gonna have a water." I was like, "You said for a coffee." He's like, "I don't drink coffee." I was like, "Okay." So I was chatting away, telling him what.
If he asked you to go for a water, maybe it'd have been a bit
exactly,
sus,
a bit
wouldn't you?
weird. Yeah. So we sat, and he was like, "Look, I'm looking to get into a different business venture." He's like, "You don't have to pay me anything." He's like, "Just can you teach me what you do? You're clearly like successful, you know what you're doing." So I invited him round to my attic, where I think my baby was maybe like 2 months old at the time, so she's crying.
I think this
downstairs.
is something we haven't mentioned. You started Prime with a new child and a refurb going on with your own house.
I was doing up my house, and my wife was pregnant. Just had so I think on the first auction, Maggie was 3 days old or something like that. So I've got a picture of her on. She's like absolutely tiny, just like on my shoulder, and just like wish me luck for my first auction. So yeah. So Lewis came over to the attic, and honestly, we should be asking him like, why did you actually stay there? I think that's more of a question because. So I came round, showed him my operation, which was basically me and a laptop and a screen writing schedules like this is what I do, and then we put them out in the marketplace. I go find buyers, and then he would listen to me on the phone. And then so he had various businesses. So I think he had like 3 or 4 different businesses that he was running. So he took me to his office and showed me how he basically manages all his businesses with all the different systems. And I was just like, this is somebody that can do the stuff that I know I need to do, but I don't have the time to allocate to. So I'm actually listening to a book at the moment called Who Not How, and I'm listening to it just now, but I think I've always just kind of implemented that. I was like, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at, and if I can find somebody who is very good at something, then I will just get them to do it. So when we came to moving out of the attic into the office, we were like, we really need to push on this social media thing. Let's really push. Let's push. And we were doing videos and we were putting out stuff. And then we actually hired a guy to come in for one day to block some content. And the day we did it, like we had nothing going on. So in sales, like sometimes you just phone, you're just getting voicemails. And that was just that day.
With the worst reels ever.
Oh man, it's like how it's like
maybe you'd make one good reel of your frustrated face, call after call after call, but then you'd be out.
So then we went to the Financial Freedom Summit, and the big takeaway from that was we need to hire a full-time media guy, and that's why we hired Nathan, because like that's his skill set, and we need him in our company that's his brain space. That's what he does. He makes the content.
I remember chatting with you at the Freedom Summit, and we're both big fans of Nico Leonard, and you saying how cool it was that he was explaining how he kept his watch dealing business and his business alive through content during the lockdowns. And you were like, oh, well, why don't we just scale our content up? And it's funny that you've told us in this conversation that one of the friction points with your previous employer was social media. And you've been like, well, guess what? One of the big vehicles for Prime is going to be our social media content.
Yeah, damn right. I mean, if I understood that, I mean, that's where people are buying stuff. I mean, people just flick through TikTok, Instagram, and then buy a t-shirt or they buy perfume. It's like, so why would they not, if they see my face and it's like investors are going, oh, actually, John sells properties. I know him because I've been watching him online for the past 2 months. I'm now in a position to buy, and they've got me, oh yeah, John, I'm looking to buy this. I can phone them up and say, tell me your criteria. So it's it's free marketing. Obviously, we have a media team, so it's not free for us, but for me, it's like the more content we put out.
It's digital real estate as well.
Yeah.
I think Reels are an interesting one because they get the vast majority of their views early on. Now, of course, you keep them on your page, but evergreen stuff like YouTube, which you guys are delving into, and podcasting, which we're on today, those are evergreen. And people will randomly message me about episode 4 from April 2020 or episode 42 or whatever, and I'm like, oh wow, that's 4 years ago.
Just sit there binging your stuff.
But they've come back and they've listened to particular things and taken certain things from it. So I really agree that by you guys producing so much content, both the shorter form stuff and then some of the longer form stuff and some of the evergreen stuff and then some of the stuff that's on stories or is viewed heavily within its first 24 hours, you're kind of covering those bases to start to build that. And previous guest in the podcast, Mackenzie Haldane, young guy from Scotland, absolutely smashed as a drop shipper. He always talks about the 7-hour rule. And he's like, it takes 7 hours for somebody to have viewed your stuff and want to then work with you or have the level of like no trust to want to work with you. And he's like, how do you build that up really quick? YouTube and podcasts. Yes, Reels will do it, but they're shorter. And he's like, you have to have this combination of the two. And I think I see that in what you guys are doing with all the content you produce through Nathan. Yeah,
we're definitely putting a more of a focus on YouTube now as well, because the Reels are fun and they give, as you say, a snippet of what's going on. But we want to do the mid to longer form content, just so we understand how much value, especially with Lewis and I both being fairly successful in business so far and having property investments, we can go into so many different things with it. And it's like, if we can teach people how we've done it, I mean, it's not, and I've not been super successful super quickly, but it's just the slow, and then it's like the hockey stick. You go, oh wow.
There's so many lessons in that as well. You mentioned one book there, but another book I know that you're a big fan of was You're a Badass at Making Money.
The super cheesy, I think it's Jennifer Serco or something.
How's it influenced you, John?
So I actually, so I don't read, I'm really badly dyslexic, but Audible has like saved my life for reading. So my old man, again, loves reading books, and he was like, John, download Audible. There's so many books on that you'll be able to listen to, and it's been great. And I listened to it in lockdown, and that's all about putting yourself out there on social media. And it's like the whole Americanized style of like, get a billboard, put your face on it, and it's like that's effectively what Instagram social media is. And then I started doing YouTube videos because you couldn't go out, you couldn't do anything. So I was just like scripting YouTube videos, and one of my mates he's an editor, so he was just editing for them, and I was putting them out there, and I was really enjoying it and just giving like general financial, like for me, basic advice. And like some of my mates that I used to train with were like, oh, I didn't realize how important having a credit card would be to help me get a mortgage. Like, thanks for that. I've now got a credit card, and I know about my credit, and he's like, I've now got a mortgage. Like, thanks for that. Just little things. I was like, oh,
tangible stuff.
Yeah, I was like, that's really good that I've managed to help somebody. So the more, just reading the book, as I say, it's super cheesy, but it's just like, you need to put yourself out there if you want the things you want to do. And I think one of the things she covers in the book is like, she was like terrified that, oh no, I'm not going to make enough money. And then she got a mentor, paid some money, and he was like, this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. Went out, and then she won her first client, made like 50 grand. And it's like, for me, it was just putting those things in place. And it's like, oh, sometimes you think, oh, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if you can do it. It's like, just try it, but you need to tell people what you're doing. That's the massive thing. And if you're on social media, that you can tell thousands of people.
Yeah,
thousands.
That whole, I've talked about it enough. You probably haven't.
Yeah.
Because your story will only have been seen by 10, 15% of the people that follow you. Guess what? You're going to probably need to post it again later in the week and hope that it's seen by some of that percentile that didn't get to see it already.
Yeah, definitely.
Alongside that book then, one of your biggest values is positivity.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
So I lost my mum when I was really young. And because of that, so I mean, I know you're looking at me and you're like, oh, you've got a beautiful bald head. So I've actually got alopecia. So I lost my hair when I was quite young. And I think me just like being like, it's okay. Because again, being a 6 foot 12-year-old with no hair makes me stand out anyway. So maybe if I was just like, oh, it's fine, people are like wanting to talk to me, like, and just like be bubbly and want people to talk to me. So I think trying to like, shit things happen in life. But one of my best mate always says, John, you look through like rose tinted glasses. And I was like, it's better that way. I was like, why, if things are going shit, fair enough, shit things happen. But can you learn from them? And what can you drive from there? Yeah. So if you're constantly thinking, oh, this is terrible. If you're like, this is great. Then it's like, if you're just positive about everything you can be in life, your life will be so much better. If you're negative about everything in life, guess what? Your life's going to suck.
Yeah, we've used the phrase a few times, but a self-fulfilling prophecy, the language you use will come into existence, and that's not me saying that you're manifesting into existence, but if you do continually, as you say, get down about everything that you talk about, and the whole like, oh, how are you? Yeah, not bad, mate. That's such a negative thing to say.
I have a client, and I'd taken this from him, so every time I phone him, I was like, how are you getting on? He's like, absolutely fantastic, and he is super successful. So if anybody has, if you ever phone me, it's like, how are you getting on, John? I'm living the dream. And it's like, you put that out there, and it's like, I'm super excited. Every day I'm learning something new. I'm doing what I want to do. Whereas, as you say, if you're like, how are you getting on? Aye, not bad. It's the most Scottish thing, isn't it? Not bad. I'm not bad. Tell people you're great if you're great, man. Like, it's okay.
And do you know what? It is infectious. Like, I know when you and I chat on Instagram, I come away from it like excited and energized, whether it's about sales or crypto or watches or whatever we chat about, I come away with a positive energy from it. Yeah. And if you become that person for quite a lot of people, you're somebody that people want to be around. Yeah. And guess what? If you're somebody that people want to be around, you're probably going to feel pretty good about your impact on the people that you interact with. Like, I would hate to be known as like the dementor or the mood hoover that people hang around like, oh, don't invite Colin because he'll just like moan or bitch or get everyone down. Yeah.
I mean, it's... I like to drink, I like to party, and it's funny because Lewis doesn't, he likes to party, but he doesn't drink, and he's funny, it's like, because he's like, you're just amplified when you have a few drinks, and I will go and talk to everybody, so I'm like, I met 10 new friends, and he's like, why are you talking to him? I was like, I have no idea, let's go party.
But that is also a skill set that you use in your day job and your career, so it's good that you've married two things together that come quite naturally, because I think the worst thing you could do is have a persona that you play in work or a persona that you play in life and it not like coexist nicely. Because I think for me especially, some of the guys that I've like coached and helped with their sales, they've been like, oh, I'm naturally like not that outgoing. I'm like, that's fine, as long as you don't try and go on the phone and be the super outgoing guy. You maybe need to be slightly reserved, but just try and sell in another fashion, like, or find your buyers that are amenable to that sort of style. Because you'll have particular people, John, that like love dealing with you, but there'll be a couple of guys that invest in property that are like, nah, John's style isn't for me, and that's fine. That's great, because there's enough people out there that can lean into your style, and you're almost like separating the wheat from the chaff at that point and finding who does actually want to spend time around you.
100%. I think exactly as you said, it's like if you put out what you want, then you will get it back. And I'm glad that, like, when I speak to you get encouraged as well. You're positive about things. I mean, that's what I want. There's no point of, like, as you say, coming away from a conversation with someone and be like, wow.
It's a ripple effect. It really is. And I think that's probably why, like, so for example, caught up with Julian last night, and he was saying he's bought properties from you, he sold a property with you, and he likes dealing with you, and he comes back to deal with you again. Stephen Clark, who's been on the show, and you guys are now involved with the Scottish Property Podcast. He's done multiple deals with you because he likes dealing with you on a personal level, and then the level down from that is that you're really trustworthy and solid when it comes to the actual business transaction. So it's like a perfect marriage.
Well, it's like if there's a big thing, it's like, don't do business with friends. But I'm like, all my clients are now my friends. So I've just done business with so many people for so long now that they're actually my pals now. It's like, fair enough, I've got like a close group from like school that we still go out a couple of times every few months and we'll catch up and stuff like that. But the people that I speak to day in, day out are my clients, but now my clients have become my friends. So it's just me being me and only wanting to associate with people that are wanting to do business with me. And it's like, now the people that are hanging out with me, we can always do business.
Yeah, on a practical level, I'm really keen to understand the role of an auction house within the property sector. Who are your market? Who are your buyers? Who are your sellers?
I mean, it's super important. Every property should be sold at auction, Colin. Especially with prime property auctions. So we do a survey on all our sellers. So there is 3 main categories. So we have tenanted properties is a big one. So just landlords, they don't want to evict the tenants, and ultimately they understand that the person buying that property is going to likely be another investor. That's our main buyers as investors, and they're happy to buy a property with a sitting tenant in it, and they want that security of the sale. So when somebody buys from us, they've actually got to pay a deposit. And a buyer is like, okay, well, I actually want to buy this, I'm happy to pay this deposit, and I'll complete on a certain date. So there's the security from both the buyer and the seller. Then there's the other one is they've just been on with an estate agent. So say if you don't know too much about property, and you're like, I'd probably sell this for £200,000. But then an estate agent comes around and he's like, Colin, your house is the best I've ever seen. Oh, it's amazing. Oh, I'll get you 300, maybe 350. You're like, oh, I would have taken 200. But now your bar is reset to 300. But an estate agent is going to come out and tell you whatever you want to hear to win that listing, because they get paid for a sign-up fee, and then once they're on, then it comes to like, oh, well, we're not getting any offers where you want them to be. So people get sick of that. I mean, people put their property on the market to sell it. And if you've already got a price, so a lot of the people we speak to, it's like, okay, well, what do you want to sell it for? Oh, well, I got told this. It's like, no. What would you be happy? So you're looking at another purchase. Okay. So what do you actually need to make sure you can buy that property? As part of the chain,
what do you need to come in?
Exactly. And then so that's another part. So it's the people that haven't sold on with estate agents, they come to us, and then we get them sold. And then there's inherited properties and properties that need refurbished. So
slightly more motivated sellers from that perspective. But then equally, like, I've spoken to some of the investors you've sold property for, and they've said, oh, it just didn't form part of my portfolio anymore, because either they had a repair to do that they weren't happy with, or the interest rates went up or something like that as well. So there's lots of like little niggling factors that can be in that third category, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, with Stephen's property, I think he wanted more, and we had it on for a while, and then he's trying to like close that company. It's the last property. He's like, oh, John, I'll take this because I don't want to do another year of accounts. And I was like, no problem. And as soon as he told me that, we sold in a week. So motivation is always a part of a sale, but we try and we will sell anything. I mean, we have sold properties for 2 first-time buyers and 4 over home report. Because if you turned around to me and said, well, John, I'm not selling this property for anything less than £100,000, that's fine. It might just take you, say, 6 months to get that £100,000. As long as you're happy to wait for that time, then it's not a problem.
What are the main services you offer to make sure that the properties sell for as fast as possible?
If speed is your main goal in getting it sold, then discount is a massive thing. But we focus on getting really good photographs. So we actually outsource our photographs to a great guy, Christoph. He does the majority of our photos, and he's excellent. He goes out, I mean, he'll leave his house at 4 o'clock. He sends a photograph outside the property at like 5 o'clock in the morning, puts our boards up, and he does a great job. Does all the video tours for us, does our floor plans. So we can go, look, here's the property that you're buying. Because the first assumption when somebody sees a property at auction is, oh no, it's terrible, there's something wrong with it. That's not the case. And we give all the photographs, there's the home report, there's the legal documents, what are you looking to offer? And it's making sure that we set out all the information for somebody who can then go and do all their relevant due diligence, because once they commit to that and pay the deposit, they are tied into buying that. So the more information that we can give them, the more insights, the happier they are to make an offer that the seller is going to accept ultimately. That
reassurance piece. And I think it's funny you bring up the level of misconception there might be about the types of listings you would have, and there's probably a little bit of work you need to do when somebody first comes to you to dispel that and like disregard that, and well presented, all the information available, whether it's the home report, the legal documents, all kind of sat there ready for them in like a nicely presented pack. Give somebody reassurance that, all right, I'm actually dealing with something that is decent here, and it's not just a higgledy-piggledy pushed together thing.
To be fair, some of the properties we're selling are not great, but it's like giving them all the information, like, because people are like, can I view that property? And I'm like, you can tell that from the photographs and the video. I mean, we've got a property on the books at the moment. It's back to brick. And he's like, one of the guys speaking to was like, can I view it? And I was like, what do you think you're going to see if you view that property? I said, do you want to go and touch the walls? It's like, go past it. It's fine. Like, ultimately, property investment's about the numbers. What can you buy something for? How much do you think it's going to take to refurb it? And then what's it going to sell for? What's it going to refinance for? And what's it going to rent for? Too many people get wrapped up in wanting to go into every property. I mean, maybe I am just an outlier, but because I have bought so many properties, I mean, the last 10 properties I've bought, I've not been through the doors because I have no desire to go through them. They're not properties that I'm going to live in, and they're not properties that I care like what they are like. It's like if you go into a tenanted property, guess what? It's probably going to stink because tenants, especially some of the properties we sell, when they come round, they've not been cleaned because they're busy. It's like, oh no, and it's like if you go in and on a Tuesday morning they've had a Monday night and it's like, oh, there's still stuff everywhere. It's a tenanted property.
Yeah, I think it's important you bring up that numbers piece though, because as you say, there's going to be stuff within your lots that are quote unquote not particularly desirably looking. But if the investor runs the numbers and he can get it for a set price and he knows his refurb's going to cost X, Y, or Z, then it becomes a good asset for him. And it's all relative because everybody has to live somewhere.
Yeah.
And by moving something that's in a state of like unlivable, it's back to brick.
Yeah.
To being on the housing market again, I think that's a great thing. And I find it really funny when people talk about like property investors in like a negative light from that perspective. I'm thinking, well, would you not like more properties in the market, like the whole Scottish Government thing where they just give this crusade, well, maybe more so when the Green Party were in, but this crusade against private landlords?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's property investors are there to put good properties on the market, especially if buying them from us. If it's a property that's been sitting empty for 10 years and someone's going to go in, they're going to spend a lot of money on it, doing up, bringing it back to somewhere that somebody actually wants to live, and that's a good thing.
What have been the favourite deals you've been involved in?
Favourite how?
Good result for all three parties.
We sold a property in the Gorbals. It was just a pretty horrible situation. The person was on palliative care and they needed a really quick sale because the title was held in joint names, and basically the person who was in palliative care didn't actually, like, it was an ex-partner of theirs, and they're like, we know we'll get nothing if we don't sell it quickly. So they wanted 70,000 and we actually sold it for £80,000. And they were like, we need it complete super quick. And luckily enough, a client of mine bought it, was super happy with it, and they completed in 2 weeks. And like super clean, and they were so happy with the result. I mean, and that was when speed was their main criteria. And obviously, some people in property industry would try and get it. Especially we don't try to buy our properties. We always put them to market and sell them to somebody else because we know we'll get a better price for it at that point. So that was like super, super good. Like for everybody involved, the person that bought it was super happy that obviously we phoned them. So now next time I offer them on our property, they're like, oh, good, this is another good deal kind of thing. The person that we sold it for was super happy as well, and it was just a clean transaction from start to finish. I mean, that was a really good one for the clients. But I mean, for me, I'm like, it's like best one. I'm like, what's the biggest fee that we've charged?
Of course. We
sold a business centre in Cumbernauld, which is
commercial property.
I mean, that's what we're actually trying to get more into, is a little bit more commercial property, just because the fees are better. It's bigger properties, bigger ticket items, so we want to try and do a little bit more.
The vehicle matters. You've maybe heard me talk about this before as well, like moving from the insurance industry into the furniture industry, you're just selling higher value products at a higher margin. So of course you as the sales guy can take a larger cut of that because you're involved in something that's of a higher total overall. So I completely understand that pivot.
Yeah, I'm bringing on a Tesco in a couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to selling that because it also opens up like a new avenue for different investors, because our bread and butter is residential properties, so cheaper residential properties that need a refurb done up or tenanted, so I can sell them all day. But the higher end commercial stuff, it's exciting because it's like, oh, I maybe not have dealt with that buyer, I've not dealt with that person before, so it will open up new investors potentially.
You've done so well in the residential space and things have moved really quickly at Prime, like July 2022, like to look at where you're at now with the team, the new office and the volume of lots that you're selling each month, that's really, really exciting. What do you put that down to?
Marketing, really. We really have put a lot of money back into the company, so every month we're also analysing what's going on, what are we selling, where are we getting our leads from, because we run Facebook ads, we run Google ads, we obviously do our own social media.
I would love to see the comments on your Facebook ads, because Facebook is a wild west, isn't it? Instagram, I think people are just that tiny bit more refined, not a lot, but enough to like behave themselves.
I mean, when I used to do a lot of like direct down the camera, like we'll sell your property and all that, was just like, oh, Tyson Fury's selling houses now. And it's always Tyson Fury. It's like, Tyson Fury's not going back to the box. And I'm like, oh, God.
It could be a lot worse.
It could be worse. It could be worse. I think somebody actually commented like, are you single? And I was like, oh, that's quite nice.
No, but thank you for the compliment.
No, exactly. Yeah, I'm not. But like, up to people, imagine that. It's like you put an ad out to try and sell someone's house, and then that's how you found your partner. Yeah,
wonderful. The internet's a good place.
Yeah.
That's really cool. But marketing has been a cornerstone of where you guys are at. Of course, once you get them in the front door, there needs to be a process to move them forward. You've obviously got huge sales experience. You brought Lewis on that sales journey with you, but now we've talked a lot about some of the young guys that have come in to join the team as well. How important's that been?
Oh, so important, and especially when they come in. What we're big on is like, look, you don't know anything yet, and that's okay. We are here to take you along the journey and teach you the things to make you better. And it's just that we need people on the phones. And that's to scale, because there's only so many hours in the day that Lewis and I could be on the phones. And at which point it's like, okay, we need to hire more people. I mean, we've just hired another 3 sales staff, which is super exciting, because it just means that then the guys that we are training just now can then be responsible for training the next people.
Yeah. And I always laugh about this. I think one of the best ways to confirm your knowledge of a skill is to teach it on to others, because it forces you to think through what you've done and then distill it down into actionable terms that don't sound like super highfalutin, complicated ideas, and you teach it on. So like if I'm like talking about, oh, like this is how I would structure a cold call or whatever, I'm like, oh, that's really good. I should make sure I remember that for all my future calls as well. So if you have those guys that have maybe like made that slight step up, and then the new guys that come in, they're able to be like, oh yeah, well when I was starting, like this is one of the things that really helped me in terms of like when I was negotiating on this part of the deal, and they'll probably find that their own process gets more and more refined because of that.
Because what we do, so every Monday I sit with all the sales team individually, so I take them all for an hour, and I sit down and we do call reviews. So inbound calls, how are they handling people who are phoning in, and how are they handling calls that they're actually phoning? Because so the way that leads are brought into our business, so people phone us, so that's fine. That's what I consider a hot lead. If somebody's picking up the phone, wants to buy something, like that's a hot lead. You should be giving them everything, try and get them to figure out what it is they actually want to offer there and then, see if we can get a deal done that day. Other people is just like, scroll through Rightmove, just requesting documents. So it's like maybe a warmer lead. It's not a cold lead, it's a warm lead. Maybe just looking, they're not necessarily in the market right now, but they're just checking what's available, what's in the area. So it's like, how are they handling that outbound call to them and following up with them? So we'll go over that, and then we'll do live sales calls with them.
I call that like game tape.
Yeah.
So they're watching back their footage in the same way like a Premier League player or a rugby player would watch back how they got on. Mm-hmm. And again, I've probably spoken to you about this before, John, but as I've developed as a podcaster, I've listened back to almost all of the 250 odd episodes.
How do you find it listening to yourself?
It's fine
initially?
now.
Yeah.
It's fine now. Initially, it's quite painful, but you really do notice a difference in terms of my clarity of delivery, my clarity of questions, my listening skills, and those are all things that I identified as like what I needed to work on. Filler words was a killer though.
Yeah.
When you find out there's a word that you use all the time, whether it's yes or 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 and you hear it, oh, you're like, oh shit, I need to get rid of that. But you can only become competent by being conscious.
Of course. And
over time, when you start to realise that, it starts to get better and better. And there'll be calls that you listen back to and you maybe didn't have your best call, and you'll be like, oh, that's funny that I didn't ask the question in a way that I normally would. But it's only by like you listening back to it with a team and showing them that obviously you're not perfect, but there's certain behaviours that you consistently do and certain structures to a call or certain ways that you lead a conversation.
I'm glad you touched on the structures, because I've tried to explain to all of the sales team, it's like, I am not doing anything special. I just follow the same framework of every call that comes in, because then I know like that's ticked off, that's ticked off, that's ticked off. I'm not doing anything special. You may think, oh, well, John managed to get that sale because it's like, no, because I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. Okay, they've gone here, now I'm doing this. Or they've gone there, now I'm doing this. I'm not going like, oh, John's just great at convincing people to make offers. I'm qualifying them correctly to find out where they are, and then I just do it the same thing every single time.
so helpful because there's probably some jazz hands or razzmatazz within some of the areas because of your level of skill and what you're good at. But as you say, it's a general framework that you're following and process to get some sort of commitment before you move forward, to get some sort of understanding of what their appetite is or their expectations are, rather than, like you say, oh, it's just because I'm amazing on the phone that I've closed this call. That helps, but it's there's a general structure to follow, and I think that should empower people. Like you say, you were saying some people are a bit more introverted, some people are a bit more reserved. They can follow that framework but just implement their own personality type on that. But of course there's certain boxes they need to tick to do that.
They say experts just do the basics really, really well.
Yeah, of course they do. So that's been like a fundamental growth piece. How important do you think things are like BBC Homes Under the Hammer and stuff like that?
I think that's just more an ego trip for myself.
Interesting. Hashtag get hammered.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good to be on it. It's obviously brand building, it's brand awareness, and it's a lot more trust as well. I mean, I had a client who sold a property with us, and we got a really good result. She was super happy, and then now she's selling something else with us. And she was like, I didn't realise I was dealing with somebody famous. I saw you on the TV the other day, and I was like, oh yeah. So it's good to be on it. But for me, it's an ego thing. Because I can say, like, I'm on the telly.
From a networking perspective, have you found anyone that you've met through that?
I think by the time I was on it, people already kind of knew who I was.
You were in a lot of the right circles, like through actual networking events. I guess my view on stuff like TV or press is validation, yes, for the ego, but validation in the public side that you're legitimate and you are who you say you are. Yeah. Because why would they platform him if he wasn't somebody he said he was, or why would he create all this content if it wasn't who he really was and what he really thought? It's
probably helped Prime grow a little bit quicker because we've got that notoriety. It's like, oh well, John of Prime Property Auctions is on BBC. He must know what he's talking about. He must be able to sell his properties, because when people come to an auction house, that's what they want. They don't want, they're not just going to come to me because I'm on the telly. They want to come to me because they know that I'm going to sell them the property, or they know they're going to get a good deal when they buy a property from me.
When a business is growing really, really quickly, it's very rewarding, but of course it takes a lot of time and energy. One of your phrases is actually, the shop is always open.
Yeah.
How do you handle that always on lifestyle?
I think you should probably ask my wife. I think I've just always been that way wired, especially like WhatsApp and Instagram. If somebody's interested about buying a property, because of the way that the website's all set up, I can click 2 buttons and then send them the documents to them. And then if they text me, it's like, oh, well, John, I'd buy this property for £100,000. If I know that the seller would take £100,000, then I'd be like, okay, make the offer through the website, and I'm pretty sure we're good to that. I just need to qualify that it's definitely okay, and I can then text the seller and say, I've got an offer of £100,000. If they say yeah, I can send an invoice from my phone when I'm sitting there. So my wife is like, we'll sit and watch Netflix. I mean, people always say, oh, don't watch Netflix. When I go home, I sit and watch Netflix with my wife. Fair enough, I've got my phone, I'm usually doing stuff on the phone, but I'll sit and watch Netflix. It's not a big deal.
But in terms of that, always processing stuff, you're actually talking about things that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And an exercise that I've done with a previous guest called Sahil Bloom, and I actually did it with David McIntosh. I'm sure you're familiar with Development by David, who uses this studio as well. It's like an energy calendar. Mm-hmm. And there's particular activities during the day that give you energy, pretty neutral, and take energy away. Mm-hmm. So if, for example, you absolutely hated producing the invoice or the negotiating partner, not that you would, but there'll be particular individuals, there'll be parts of their business that it's like, that's like really sore and frictionful and like takes away from them. Being always on would be really, really challenging.
Okay.
So instead for you love making the deal happen. So it's actually giving you energy. So to be always on in particular areas that you enjoy doing doesn't feel as much like work as it would for other people. I'm sure there'll be stuff within the business that you find a little bit more draining, whether that's like, oh, we had to fill out the CRM, or we had to fill out the accounts, or whatever it was. There'll be something within the business where you're like, I don't look forward to that task. In fact, I try and put it off. So that would be like red for you. So if somebody was like, guess what, John, you're doing that all day tomorrow, you'd be like, oh, let me switch off as fast as I can. Whereas if you recognize what you're really good at, which is the areas of the business that give you energy, they get you excited, they don't feel like when you're logging onto your phone at night on the couch that it's like a drag on you. In fact, if anything, you're like, oh, guess what, I just this one's just gone through and it's another deal with this client, I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing. Like, I don't feel like I'm working when I'm texting people about properties that I'm trying to get a deal over the line. Obviously, it's there is a monetary goal there for me as well. If I get a deal done, I get paid. So I need to get paid in order for the business to grow. I think before we hired an admin assistant, I was doing all the legal packs. So once we sell a property, we actually have to complete all the legal documents and send them off to the solicitors. And then a lot of that's like getting all the AML documents and stuff like that. And it got to a point, I think 1 month last year, I think our biggest month, we sold like 26 properties. And that was just with me, Lewis and Mitchell. So it was 3 of us. And then I had to do all the legal packs for that. And then the next month we didn't sell as many because I was like, well, I'm not on the phones now because I'm spending so much time trying to get the admin done. And I was just like, this needs to stop.
You were taking time away from the stuff where you're the most high value, whereas you could pay a percentage amount towards this area, a new member of staff or a new admin that would be able to do that.
Yeah, and it buys back my time, because if I then, I don't have to do any of this admin, I can then focus more time on making calls, bringing more properties on and selling more properties.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things from a personal perspective, I've heard you say before that you had the goal of owning 100 properties.
Yeah.
You've been really investing in property from well before you had your own business. How have you been able to balance investing in the business and investing in your portfolio?
So I try and buy one property a year. So once I get my portfolio gets big enough, I'm sure that will scale to more actually holding properties in my portfolio. So at the start of the year, I was like, I need to buy a property. So in January, I went and bought a property from an estate agent. Guess what? I mean, you don't have to buy from off market.
Outrageous. What are you talking about?
So, and again, it was property. I like Rutherglen as an investment area. I've got some properties there. So it was on the market. It was tenanted, which I like. So, because I know it's like proof. Like, there we go. Someone's living there. They're happy to do it. And it's immediate cash flow from day one. So I managed to get it for a good discount. Did it. And then I was like, that's ticked off for this year. So boom, and then I can focus this year on the business, and then come next year I'll be like, I need to buy another property.
In January we'll go
exactly,
again.
Yeah. So I tend to buy properties between usually November and February for whatever reason. Just every time I bought something, I don't know if there's more motivation at the year for some people to sell. So when interest rates went actually mental, so last year, I agreed to buy another HMO in a street that I've already got one. I probably didn't have enough money to do it at the time. But I was like, do you know what? I'll commit to it. Agreed to buy it because I knew that interest rates were going mental and nobody else would buy it. And the price I got offered it at, I was like, that's a really good deal. And fortunately enough, I just made it work. I was just like, sometimes it's like, if you agree to buy something and figure it out later, then it worked out well, thankfully. It could have maybe blown up in my face, or if I didn't buy it, I mean, there's nothing worse. Like if I commit to buy something, I always buy it because I know what it feels like as a sales agent when somebody says, I'll buy this, and then they don't buy it. I'm like, fuck you. How dare you? The worst
people.
Yeah, exactly. How dare, like, why waste my time? You wasted your own time here. But yeah, if I can just tick off one property a year for, say, the next 5 years, by the time it will just start to snowball from there, and then you can buy 2 in a year, then you can buy 3 in a year. Because I'm not big on investor finance. It's like I make the money, and then I go, I'm going to park this for later. I'm going to make the money, I'm going to park this for later.
It's Stephen was talking to me about this, making money in your trading business and then parking the money in your investment business. Yeah. So trading business would be prime, and then your investment business will be whatever your investments are under. And just understanding that let's make as much money and as much revenue generation in the trading business and really, really grow, because that will allow you to scale quicker on the investment side, which is something that some people forget. And I know that I think it's a great habit to have a certain amount going away into an ISA or a crypto portfolio, or we won't get into that today, or other areas. But it's also important to make sure that you feed the machine, which is going to drive business forward as well, because ultimately to turn prime into the behemoth that you want it to go into, you might not be able to buy the second property in the year, as you said.
I think ultimately people try and invest their way to riches, when if you invest in yourself and you get like a high skill that you then can trade that for more money, then you make more money, and then it's easier to invest, because the best properties really to invest in are not necessarily the lower properties, because you're only getting, say, £150 cash flow. Fair enough, if you've got limited funds, it's a good way to really start because it gets you on that path. But then people who have been doing it for years will be focusing on the higher ticket stuff, so your commercial properties or HMOs, large HMOs, hotels, things like that, because it's then their big cash cows. It's like, okay, well, I've got £1 million to invest and I'm going to buy this commercial building. and then it's like boom, this is spitting out 150,000 pounds a year.
That's a great point, isn't it? And I think that's relative in many areas. Even if you hark back to the investment piece you were saying at uni, it's probably like 50 quid or something you were chucking away each month. I remember the first time I got my direct debit up to £500 a month for my HL account, and I was like, all right, brilliant. But then you work out that that's £6,000 across a year, and if you get 10% on that, it's 600 quid. You can make 600 quid pretty easily if you just get really good at what you do day to day. So it's all about, how can I get that 500 up to 1,000? Can I get to 1,500? What can I scale that to, while of course building my skill set that's allowing me to generate money that's going to get funneled across there? Yeah,
it's definitely important to invest, because it kind of gets you on the path of like understanding. Because if you, I mean, I still invest into a pension, and I've still got an ISA, and I do that every month. It's not sexy in any way, but I do it because worst case scenario, if Prime didn't work out, then I still know that I've got funds sitting there. Or say I can't work anymore, at least I know I've got something there. Because it's like, if you just invest in the S&P 500, it's not sexy by any means, but if you just do it month over month over month over month, you will be set up in the long term. But if you want real riches, you need to have a high skill set that you can then trade for a lot of money. Once you're making that lot of money, you can buy better investments.
Completely agree. Yeah, I think that's so true. In terms of better investments, you're into your watches. You sold one of them to give you the bigger emergency fund. Yeah. What's going on in that area?
So I'm trying not to buy anything this year. I got the new GMT Master last year, which is not. I've got a two-tone Submariner, this is a two-tone GMT. So I have two very similar watches, but one's on the Jubilee, one's on the Oyster. So they are both beautiful watches, but I'm like, maybe I should not buy another watch for a while. But I mean, I said that, and last night I was looking, scrolling, and I messaged them what some watches, because I really like vintage pieces. So what I want to get is a Rolex Day-Date, like the Tony Soprano style.
We were actually talking about this yesterday. I was training with Julian, and we're talking about, I was interviewing you tomorrow, and he was like, oh, he's really into his watches, you'll have a great chat about that. And I said, I completely agree. And I was saying, there's so many guys from like, I don't know, I would say like 25 to like 50 who loved the Sopranos. And if you think of a gold watch, you immediately think of Tony Soprano's watch. And he was like, I'm not that into watches, but I've got a gold Casio. And I was like, the upgrade from the gold Casio, it's Tony Soprano's Rolex.
The slight upgrade. Because I messaged Watson for watches, and then it was, so I think we could source you one, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to come back to you when I can definitely not have to worry about it, especially when we're hiring more staff. We've just taken on obviously a massive office. It's like, is it wise for me to then have a big splurge on something that is a luxury item that I just do it because I really enjoy it? It's like, I like jewellery. I buy my wife nice jewellery not because she wants it, it's like because I like her having it. So it's something nice to have, I think.
Yeah, and perhaps there'll be a milestone that you hit where you decide that watch can be linked to that milestone as well. I think that can be really helpful too. Like the Watson Watches boys, when they were on the show, they were laughing that the number of stories they have where somebody's like, oh, and this happened in my life, and then I was able to market with a watch that I got from you guys. And they're like, we hear like the coolest stuff. So it could be like Prime hits a particular figure and you're like, guess what? Out comes the Day-Date.
Yeah, I think so. My first luxury watch I got was a Breitling Navitimer, and I got that for my 30th birthday. I remember I used to play rugby with a guy, and he had one, and I was like, "What watch is that?" And he's like, "This," and I was like, I think it was maybe like 15 at the time, and I was like, "I'm getting that watch." And it was the first watch that I got, and I still I was wearing it all last week, and I still love it. It's actually my wife's favourite watch of mine, and I was like, it's just nice. And then I actually got this for surviving 6 months, and in Prime, because it was one of those things I was like, I've made it out of the woods. The first 3 months was really, really hard. Obviously, new baby, thinking, oh my God, are we going to make this through? And then made it through, and we surpassed a certain revenue, and I was like, I'm going to treat myself. And then I did the same when I got the GMT. So I was like, maybe I need to.
What are we going to link the Day-Date to?
I don't know.
You're signing a verbal contract here, so be careful.
I need to make it lofty because
because of the size of the expense.
Exactly.
You don't need to commit now, but if there's something in your mind,
it would probably be another turnover, a certain monthly turnover. I like that. If it's like, okay, if I hit X amount this month, so when I got the GMT, it was like, when we get 100 grand in revenue in 1 month, I'll buy that watch.
Amazing.
and then I got it. So the funny thing is as well, because you don't just walk into a Rolex store and buy a Rolex. So I had ordered it effectively before we hit that milestone, and it actually arrived. And she was like, do you want to buy it? And I was like, yes. And that month we hit over 100 grand. So it was almost like, again, the self-fulfilling prophecy.
It had to happen. Yeah. You put the energy into the staff to be like, this is going to happen and going to come through. So that's the level of growth that you've had where there's 100k months now. That's so exciting. 26, 27 lots so far gone this month in June when we're recording.
So we're 20 so
20,
far.
sorry. Okay, cool. There's this big lofty target of 30 that you're striving to get towards. What do you think needs to happen for that to be a regular occurrence?
I think we just, I really need to focus on training the staff better and just coming back to that framework again of going, this is how I get people to buy things. And it will just come with time as well. I mean, for a lot of the staff, they're still very green in the industry. They've not been doing it long enough to really truly understand the investment metrics they're talking about to some of the clients. So the more that we can instill in them, okay, well, what is an attractive yield for a client? Okay, so he's looking at for this, and what area specific does he buy in? Okay, if he buys there, do you think he'll also look at here because it's kind of in the same region? And just really drilling that. So I think it's more down to the training and the staff to ensure it. But I'm a big believer in it. It's like the stock. We need to have the sexy stock to sell. If I've got 25 properties that people want 20 grand for it, I mean, they're selling all day. So sometimes it can be very stock dependent. So then we need to work on maybe our ads a little bit more, making sure that we're getting the right properties.
So the right sellers are coming to you with the properties that they want to shift as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a mix of it all.
There's two strands to it.
Yeah, but I am a big believer on everything will sell eventually and for the right price. So if we get an offer on something, it's maybe explaining to the seller that this is the best price you're going to get, or also if you've got someone who's on the hook for something, getting them to commit to actually make an offer on the property and get them to buy it. Because a lot of people, when they want to get into properties, like they hear about all the great deals and I could do this and I could do that. Your first property investment is not going to be your best property investment, and that is just the fact. So if you making that, dipping your toe in the water and buying something, you will learn so much more by just doing that, and it gets you on that journey. And then understanding, especially if you start dealing with us as well, you buy something, then you get offered another deal, then you understand the process of how it works, how simple it can be, and then you're like, oh, a couple of years down the line, you've got a few properties, you understand more of what you actually want, so you can be more specific about the deals you want to pick.
I find myself nodding along so much when it comes to that knowledge piece for your staff, and also the way you talk about investments, because you are an investor, would give somebody picking up the phone so much more confidence in what they're actually dealing with, and I can completely see that from that perspective. One of the last questions for you, John, what are you the most excited about going forward?
For Prime, I'm excited to have an even bigger office, more staff.
And you've got a bigger office than your current team take up, so there's still room for like headroom basically, and there's 3 new members coming as well.
So we're hiring 3 new members of staff. They start in July. So I'm just looking forward to the journey. I mean, I think more than anything else of where we can be in 5 years. I mean, I've kind of given myself a goal of $1 million a month by 2029. So it's getting
and
there.
with that would be one of the biggest in the UK, I assume.
Not even.
Wow.
Not even. Yeah. So there's ways to go from there. So we are just like literally
it's an infant game from that perspective. Like you're just going to get to keep playing.
Yeah. I enjoy the game of business. So that's what excites me, and like just learning new, because I'm fairly new in business. Fair enough, I'm expert at sales and property sales, but learning new things of how to actually grow the business and what we should do and how to drive that. That's really exciting for me.
Brilliant. And on a personal level?
It's my daughter's birthday soon, our second birthday party. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we're going away to Boston. So because when we got married, so Stacey and I, it was during COVID and stuff like that, and we couldn't go away. So I had loads of Amex points saved up. So we're flying to Boston. We're doing first class. And I can't wait.
Nice, John. Nice. Well, I'm excited to watch both the personal development, the business development, and all the things that are going to go on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Hope you have as well. Where should the listeners head towards if they want to continue the conversation with you?
So Instagram is really where I am. I think that's where we talk. So John _property auctioneer. Twitter, and you will get me there.
That'll be linked in the show notes. Thank you to you, John, and thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.
Top man.